Hello, this is Shalimar Steinberg, and today I'm going to be talking about the next of our draw commands, circle, ellipse, and donut. If we look at the circle command up here in the draw section, we will see that there is a drop-down arrow underneath it. And when we drop that down, we see that there's several different kinds of circle that we can create. The first and most commonly used is the radius center circle. So if I click on this command, you'll see that in my command bar, it asks me for the center point for my circle, or gives me the option to pick a different kind of circle instead. I'm going to go ahead and choose my center point, and I can do that again by typing the coordinates using the tab key, or by going ahead and just picking on the screen. Once I've picked a center spot, it asks me for the radius of the circle, or it tells me that I can tell it the diameter instead if I click the D key first and hit enter. So I'm going to tell it a radius of 5 and hit enter, and it creates a circle with a radius of 5 centered on the point that I chose. The next option is a center diameter circle. This is going to do the same thing, except that it's going to use the diameter. And for anyone who doesn't remember, the radius is from the center out to the edge. The diameter is from one side of the circle to the opposite side through the center. So I can then pick a center point for that one. And if I tell that one a radius of 5, or a diameter of 5, then it will draw the circle that's a diameter of 5, which is obviously smaller because that distance is spread all the way through instead of just from one side to the other. The next options are a 2-point circle. This allows me to pick 2 points on my screen, and it will create the only perfect circle that touches both of those points once exactly. I can then do a 3-point circle, which is the same thing, only it allows me to choose 3 points. And then we'll create the only circle that touches those 3 points. Next we have a tangent radius circle. And a tangent is a circle that touches another object at exactly one spot. So it is going to touch it in just one area. So a tangent radius circle, as is shown in this example here, is going to be touching 2 other objects in exactly one spot. And then you can tell it a radius, and it will create the only circle that is able to be that size and still touch both of those objects. So for example, I could choose tangent radius, and I could say I want it to touch this circle, and you can see that there's a little green sign there. That's one of my object snaps, which we'll be covering later this week. And then I can tell it I also want it to touch this circle, and I need to make it a big enough number that it's able to bridge the gap in between them. So I'm going to say I want it to be a circle of a size, say 25 for radius. And it draws a circle that is a radius of 25 and has it touch each of those circles. And it looks like it's touching along more than one spot, but if we were to zoom in close enough, we would be able to see that it is actually only touching each circle in one point. The next option then is a tangent circle, and so this allows you to not give a specific radius, but say, I want whatever size circle will touch these 3 objects that I click on. And so it will create the only circle that would fit there. Using that in concert with the trim command, which allows us to remove parts of objects, it's really nice to be able to, for example, create these odd-sized shapes, areas in between circles, and other things like it. Just a moment. Next we will consider the ellipse shapes. If we look up here, we have ellipse on the screen, and there's a drop-down arrow next to it because, like circles, there are several options that you can use. The first one is to tell it where the center point is, and then a specific axis along the edge that you want the ellipse to occur in. And just as a reminder, an ellipse is a circular shape that is not actually a circle. So it is longer in one direction than it is wide. And again, it's going to ask me to specify the center, and then it's going to say where do I want the endpoint of one axis to be, and then I can tell it where I want the other axis to be, giving it the width that I desire. And I can tell it whatever the specific amount is. I'm going to say 20 here. The next type that I can do is an axis and an end, so I don't have to specify exactly where I want the center to be. I can specify where I want the end point of the ellipse to be, and then the next end point, and then that width that I want. So for this one, I don't have to center it. This can be very useful if, for example, you're creating an ellipse and you want it to touch both sides of a box that it's inside or something like that without having to find where the center point is. And the final type of ellipse that we can do is actually an elliptical arc. And so for this object, you can create the endpoint of your arc, the next endpoint of it, and then the width that you want to do, similar to how you created your other ellipse. And then what you do is you tell it where do you want to start the arc. So for example here, and then you draw out how much of the ellipse that you want to be included in that arc. So it allows you to get shapes right up to, say, this and have an opening, or just to have only a small part of the circle. And you can specify the exact distance that you, or the exact angle that you want there. And the final one that we're going to consider in this video is the donut. This command is right here under the drop downs for draw. And this allows you to create either a filled solid circle or a ring. So if I click on the donut command, it says first to specify the inner diameter of my donut. Now, whatever number I put here is how big the donut hole will be. So if I want a solid donut, I would say 0 here. And then I would give it the outside diameter, so the outside of my shape. So I might say 5. And then it'll say, okay, where do you want the center of that donut to be? And I can place it wherever I want. Or I can go ahead and, and while I haven't hit enter, I can still place as many of these on the screen as I would like to. And now I can go ahead and exit, hitting enter here, and then I can go back into the donut command and start it again, and I can say I want the inside diameter of my donut to be, say, 0.5, and the outside to be 5, and now when I click it, it's going to look like the donut shape instead of the solid shape. So they have a small hole in the center there. And I could do whatever sizes I wanted for those. Alright, that's the end of this video. Thank you.